All right, let's get started. So it's 1:30 in the afternoon, getting kind of a late start today. First of all, I went to the gym this morning, and that usually takes about half the day. Uh, Number two, had a pretty good Raynaud's episode with my hands this morning. If you don't know what Raynaud's is, it's when your immune system, you know, basically exaggerates um, being cold and starts cutting off circulation to your hands and toes and ears and nose in an attempt to retain your body's heat in the core to keep you from dying. So it's almost like freezing to death, but it's not cold. So yeah, when it does that, when my body does that, I really can't use my hands, so you just gotta wait it out, get warmed up. Yeah, it usually freaks out other people that see it when it happens, because your hands will turn blue, and if you see somebody's hands and ears and nose turn blue, then it looks like something really serious is going on. And Raynaud's is serious, but a lot of people live with it. Now, if it happens frequently, like mine does, then you start to grow ulcers on your fingertips and the tips of your toes. It's like frostbite. And here, zoom out a little bit, so you can see everywhere that I've had, cellular damage. Uh, there's some damage coming through right there. But uh, this is probably the worst one that I've ever had. And you can still see there's a lot of the tissue underneath the surface of the skin is all liquefied because it's dead under there. And eventually the skin will break, and then we'll have to go through and surgically clean all of that, or debride all that dead tissue out. Just like we did on this one. Yeah, yeah. Same thing here. We had to cut all of this tissue out. It's part of the reason that my fingernails are so curved. We've had to remove so much tissue from the tips of my fingers, that there's just no padding left anymore. I mean, that's bone right underneath there. So when it gets cold, uh, yeah, there's no work for me. I can, you know, 50 degrees, and I can barely tie my own shoes. But yeah, still engraving though. I mean, believe it or not, I had already had uh, scleroderma and Raynaud's for, you know, well, I'd been diagnosed for 4 years before I even started engraving. As a matter of fact, as part of the reason that I started engraving was because I needed something to do. Uh, I was forced to leave my job, you know, programming industrial robots and the CNC operator. They, I became a liability to any company that I worked for. So I had to leave my job, and once they found out exactly what was going on, and why I had these nasty ulcers in my fingertips, and they determined it was scleroderma, then I got put on permanent disability, and that is the reason that I'm forced to live as cheap as I do. As soon as I went on to disability, my ability to generate income was pretty much destroyed. Uh, then you're limited to what you've accumulated through Social Security, and, and if anybody has been through disability Social Security, you know that it's not much. But I definitely learned how to limit my expenses, limit my financial exposure. Ways to eat cheap, and make my Social Security last the whole month. And there are times when it gets really close. Lately, since I moved down here, it's gotten pretty close a couple times. Um, but pray about it, have faith. Everything will work out. Always does. So, but anyway, enough about that. Today, I'm gonna try and get all this background done, and then by then, should be ready to do the first pass of shading on this whole section, so that tomorrow they start doing the final shading on one of these 5 sections. I think Saturday, do this section, start to finish. We'll do a video that's a slightly different format. We'll start over on the workbench, and I'll get the transfer on and show everybody my process for doing the transfer. And then we'll come over here, we'll cut the outlines, I'll do the background work, do the first pass of shading, and then do the final shading. and then cut out all my breaks and put it together in one video. Maybe with timestamps. If I feel like putting that much effort into it, I probably will. All right, this little bit here. So I really like starting off my day with some background removal, even though I think background removal is the most boring part. It's part of the job that requires the least amount of precision. So I think it's perfect for getting warmed up for the day. So if I have an opportunity to start off with a little bit of background work, I will. Oh, that's a good way to cut your fingers open. So don't do that. One of these days I'll learn to stop swiping my finger over the little burr. So you can see where I cut it right there. I mean, it's not bad. Not at all. If that burr had been any larger. So maybe one of these days I'll count how many times I swipe my finger across that burr to remove it. And maybe that'll remind me to stop doing it. I actually stopped myself that time. See, I'm not so old I can't learn. Let's finish down. kind of quiet today. Not a whole lot to talk about. You're trying to come up with stuff to talk about every day. The first 2 or 3 days is fine, but the third day, really don't want to rehash all the same stuff that you talked about yesterday. I think my graver's a little dull, but it's cutting nice. And it's not breaking. It just feels a little slippery, I guess. Oh, that heat's a little warm today. Little space heater underneath my bench, blowing right on my leg. Supposed to get up to 60 degrees today, but one thing I've noticed about this place is I don't really get any direct sunlight from my home. I've got this giant oak tree out front with a monstera vine. I mean, a giant monstera vine. It's cool. Its leaves are 3 feet long, but it completely blocks out all the sunlight. So even when I first got here in October, and we were still having 85 and 90-degree days, I didn't have to run the AC. It didn't really get up over 80 degrees in here. No direct sunlight, so that's pretty cool. It tells me in the summertime it'll be tolerable, and maybe I won't have to run my AC 24/7 after May. Which is something I need to have the owner look at anyway. Not that the AC doesn't work, but I know it works. I had the heat on last week, and we got a bunch of rain. And after it rained, the blower motor for the furnace wouldn't shut off, it just stayed on. So I had to go out to the central air and shut the whole thing down. Because of course, it's not on a breaker inside the trailer either. So I couldn't just shut the breaker off, but I had to shut it off at the outside unit. Then, the next day when everything dried up, I turned the power back on and the blower motor was off. that stayed off, and it's worked fine ever since. So I think there's a water leak in the top, and it's shorting out the yeah, it's shorting out the blower motor somehow, and causing the relay to stick open. So I need to have them look at that. You know, if they just give me permission to open it up and check it out, I'd do that. I'm pretty handy. I can figure that out. Now, let's see, the other thing I need to figure out before spring really gets here is a better water separator for my air compressor. I am about 90% convinced that that's my whole idle problem. Stop dragging your finger across that ding dong. You cut your finger open and bleed all over Paul's gun. So I'm trying to decide what kind of projects I want to do next. And somebody wants me to do gun parts, of course I'm going to do them. Now I got one person who contacted me this morning about doing a 1911 slide. Uh, if they seem pretty receptive and reasonable, and they understand the situation that's involved with working with me, then I'll do their gun parts. You know, the situation with me is I don't charge as much as other engravers because I don't guarantee the amount of time that it's going to take me. For a long time I did, but you know, like I was telling one of my customers yesterday, I spent 12 years trying to get back down to Florida, and I'm going to enjoy being down here. Uh, you know, engraving isn't the only thing that I do with my time. I spend a lot of time in the gym. You know, I love going rowing out on the lake. You know, I spend a lot of time at the range too. You know, and then with my medical problems and the treatments that I'm doing, you know, sometimes, you know, there might be, you know, 2 or 3 days out of the week where I won't even get out here to work. So something takes, you know, other engravers a month to do. It might take me, a month and a half or 2 months. Not because I don't want to get work done, but just because I can't. You know? I did for the first couple years that I was engraving. I would spend every day under the scope or learning how to draw or something like that. And I gave up all of my free time to engraving. And it paid off, you can tell. And you can tell that for, 4 years I was putting in 20,000 hours a year. I think that's a bit of an exaggeration. I think it's more like, 8 or 10,000 a year. But I think the reason I did was so that I could eventually slow down a little bit, so that I could buy my freedom to enjoy my life again. That's part of the reason I'm down here in Florida. It's, besides the fact that it's cold everywhere else, you know, 6 months out of the year. Down here, I've got to deal with it for what, a week, and the rest of the time I can fish. I've got a beautiful lake just outside my front door. Like to get one of those racing rowboats. What are they called? Skulls, something like that. A skull. Get out there and we got a giant lake right outside. Oh, excuse me. I'd love to get out there and just row for a couple hours every morning. 3 days out of the week I don't go to the gym. Get out there and row. And there's one that they make, and I can't remember the brand name, but it has small outboard pontoons so that you can't tip it over. Because the racing rowers, they're pretty skinny. They tip over easy. But this one, it has outriggers, little pontoons, so that it doesn't tip over. Probably slows it down a little bit, but I don't want to get out there and race. I think that'd be kind of cool. I'd rather get out on the boat than just go fishing anyway. Oh, let's see. So Chuck said I could just use this thing as a flat. And then use my 96 flat to clean up the background. Oh, yeah. And it works, but I think the profile's off just a little bit. It's awfully skatey. So I don't know. Maybe it's like everything else, and one of these days I'll wake up and try it again, and it'll just work. Yeah, kind of like this whole stippling process. For a long time, I couldn't do it at all. Then I woke up one day and tried it, and it just suddenly made sense. It's almost like the synapses just suddenly connected in my brain, and oh, here, yeah, now it works. And for me, there's a lot of stuff that's like that. Where it just doesn't make sense, and it doesn't make sense, and it doesn't make sense, and then all of a sudden it does. I remember when I was first learning how to program the CNC brake press. My trainer, Becca, get, trying to teach me how to program. And man, I would get so mad. I get so mad because I would miss steps, and forget how to do this part or that part, or then then one day it just made sense. It suddenly clicked, and my brain was like, "Oh, that's what she meant." Still follow her on Facebook, although we don't talk much. Kind of wish we did. She's kind of cool, kind of a cool person. She didn't get to interact with me too much after I figured out what I was doing with programming. So I think she only saw the part of me that got frustrated when I couldn't figure something out. So they say every person you meet sees a different part of you. Then they build an image of you based on that one interaction, and it's probably how it is with her. I think the world of her, but she probably thinks I'm some controlling psycho, because I was having a hard time figuring something out. And my frustration got the better of me sometimes, which it always has. It's something I struggle with if I can't figure it out. The funny thing is when I was younger, you know, everything was easy. Didn't matter what it was. Everything that they taught me in school was stupid simple. So I started to expect everything to be stupid simple. And when it wasn't, I wasn't emotionally prepared to deal with having to figure stuff out. So I had a lot of autistic meltdowns. And even in my adult life, I still have meltdowns on occasion. Doesn't happen very often anymore, but sometimes it does. Try to limit it, but it happens. Oh, and engraving, the only time I ever have an issue is if I'm fighting with broken gravers, and I shouldn't be. Tends to pop up there. But That's only because I think that by now I should know how to, keep my gravers from breaking. I haven't been able to figure it out yet. It's just one of those things that I deal with. Most people don't ever see. Touch that border again. Oh, my nose had quit. Tell you what, my nose isn't happy today. Let's take this. It's kind of wonky. Take that lump out. That's a little better. That's better. It's almost like sculpting. All right. Oh, come on, nose. Oh. Oh, I bet that sounded great in the microphone. All right. Where am I at? Back to a flat. Just work my way around. Metal's a little tough through here. That's always tough around the ejection port. I think it's because the manufacturer does so much work in here, with the forging process. You. And I love how deep and flat that background is. I really do. And it's not even that deep, it just looks deep. But yeah, I truly believe my background work is leveled up on this project. And that's kind of how it should be. We should be progressing a little bit on every job. And right now I'm kind of at a point where I'm not sure what I need to work on next as far as skills. I would love to get better at inlay, but we've all seen the price of gold. I don't think I'm doing any gold inlay anytime soon. I had a I had a project scheduled for spring, and that job was supposed to get almost 2 ounces of gold. That was back when gold was $2,300 an ounce, and that was only the beginning of last year. And what is it today? 51, 5,200. I'm sitting on about a quarter ounce of gold that's going to go in my Colt National match that I've got waiting for me to do for myself. Um, Found it on Gunbroker. It's a an engraver special, so it has no roll stamping on the slide whatsoever. And then on the frame, it just says government model Colt, and then the serial number. But for the most part, it's bare, nice and clean, perfect engraving canvas, no sights, and it's milled for just basic A1 sights. So it's ready for them. It didn't come with anything. But yeah, I've got about a quarter ounce of gold that's sitting waiting for it. I've got a quarter ounce of gold and I would say about 2 ounces of 999 silver. Now I want to figure out a way to incorporate both of them into that gun. Uh, Probably won't be anything more than just borders. Yeah. Although I'm not a big fan of uh, gold inlay on a stainless gun. Hmm. Gold's kind of cool no matter what, but there's just not a big enough contrast. I think gold inlay on a blued steel gun is just phenomenal. And maybe I'll save that gold for a blued Colt, one that I do later. And do some what I call faux inlay, which is just deep cut, 30 thousandths wide channels for a border that are stippled, uh, make it appear that there's some kind of a black inlay all the way around the panel. I've done it a couple times on different projects, and it always comes out looking great. I complain about how much time it takes to do it, but man, I love the way that it looks. Because it gets the same effect as it gets the same overall look as an inlay, but it's black. And on a stainless gun, the black it looks so much better than gold. And I don't know, maybe I look at it differently from everybody else. I don't care about the material being used. Gold, silver, whatever. I'm more worried about the artistic aspect of it. And I know some people don't like it, but I'm not afraid to use copper in a gun either. I'll use less than precious metals. That doesn't bother me. If I want the orange, then we use copper. If I want a pink, then we use rose gold. Even though the last time I tried to do rose gold, I made a mess. Because it was just too hard for me to get it to smush down properly and spread out into the channels underneath it, into the undercuts. But that was a couple years ago, and if I were to attempt it right now, I'd probably do it without any issue. Yeah, it's you wake up one day and it all works. That's how the whole engraving thing worked for me. Especially with drawing scroll work. I drew and drew and drew and drew, and it didn't make any sense. And then one day, I understood what I was looking at. And I think that was the biggest hurdle for me to overcome, was that, I don't form a picture in my mind. Not at all. I mean, I can't form a picture in my brain to save my life. Uh, Everything for me is words and, it sounds weird, but mathematical formulas. So I have a constant narrator that doesn't shut up. And the hardest part about me doing these videos where I talk constantly is really all I'm doing is just repeating what my narrator says to me. And I'm filtering out the negative things that it says to me, which is all the time. But, for the most part, whatever my narrator says to me is what you guys are hearing in the videos. And it'll get really interesting whenever we get into shading. Whenever I start shading, my narrator will tell me exactly what to do and what to look for, and You know, and my narrator is like, okay, now you want to hold the engraver just slightly to the left and watch that edge. Don't touch the edge. You know, you're getting too close. Better space those lines out a little bit. My narrator will, critique me as I go, and as long as I can keep myself from censoring my narrator, then you'll all get to hear it. Oh, that looks pretty good. Yeah, forming images in my mind, that doesn't happen. There's nothing there. It's just black. It's all audio. It's all audio. There's no video. When I close my eyes, all I see is, the light coming in through back to my eyelids. You try to filter that out. You can't. It's always there. Sometimes I can stare up at the ceiling. I can draw. I can mentally draw small portions of something. But if I want to form a mental picture of anything, I have to physically go through. I have to look at a clean wall or a clean sheet of paper, and then in my mind go through and draw in any detail that I want to see. Not physically, but mentally, I have to build all of those details. They're not already there. So yeah, makes my job kind of difficult. But maybe that's why it's so satisfying when I finish a piece. You get to see you finally get to see what it looks like, because I've never seen it before. Yeah, and you'd think I'd seen it in my mind at least once, but nope, never seen it before. I wonder if my stippling tool is getting dull. It looks like it might be. Might be a little rounded off on the edge. That little bit of brightness there. That kind of tells me that my stippling tool isn't as sharp as it used to be. or my wrist is getting lazy on. I'm starting to hold it down, or a combination of both, really. I think I need to reshape it. I'll have to cut some fresh carbide to do it. I don't think I have any more scrap that's the right length, or that's even close. I think they're all too short now. Let's take care of you. It all looks okay. I'm happy enough with it. Back to Alright. Still got a long ways to go. $96. So just use the 96 like a weed eater, he says. I guess in some spots it does work. That's better. Okay, on small spaces, the flat works for just completely weeding out the background. Let's go from this way. Got to think of the best way to approach a cut so that the back side of the underside of the graver doesn't catch on the surface that you want to keep. So you usually see me starting in a corner and then cutting to the middle of the corner. That way the sharp edge of the belly rides right inside that crease. So even if I do touch it a little bit, there's already a notch there for it to ride in. Oh, I think I need to get all my plants replanted today too. I've got a bunch of babies that I've started. My monstera that's taken over my oak tree out front, the one with gargantuan leaves. I've got a couple babies that I started off of it that I'm propagating in water. And they're starting to seriously slow down on their growth. So I think it's time to get them out of the water and get them in some soil. They're not really developing any roots, but they're not dead, which is weird. There's no root development. Each one has one leaf and a growth nodule, and the leaf looks nice and healthy. It's just no growth. So I'm going to try and put them in some small planters. Maybe they're just not liking the whole water thing. They like it enough to survive, but not enough to actually grow. So try that. All right. this thing even flat on the bottom? Because it doesn't feel like it. It is. Okay. Do-do-do. I wonder if my microscope got bumped. Oh, maybe a little bit. Lining up one of the pinholes in my vise for the center of rotation. And then I'll move my scope to match that hole. Now the center of my turntable is matched to the center of the viewport of my microscope. I should put the center of rotation right dead center. So now wherever I move my vise, that center of rotation stays fixed in the middle of my scope. And that's how you get nice pretty cuts. And if you're just using a vise heavy enough to hold your part, but still light enough that you can push around on your turntable and stay at that center of rotation, you stand a much better chance of getting really good lines. One of these days I would like to do a project where I don't stipple the background at all, where I just take the time to make it perfectly flat and then come with an abrasive and smooth all that out. Get rid of all those tooling marks. And smooth it all out with an abrasive like this. That's just a piece of fiberglass rod inside a pen or a mechanical pencil. And you can get it pretty flat with a flat graver. Then you can come in here with the abrasive, once make the abrasive smaller, but you can come in here and sand down all the tooling marks and make it perfectly flat and then just leave it that way. I think that'd be kind of cool. Or even get it this flat and then come in with a dot punch. Dot punch would be cool. Or inlay it all in copper. I was looking at one last night. Sent it to a buddy. Yeah, nice engraving that with the background all inlaid in copper, and then the copper was dot punched, so it looks like beads. Oh, it was so cool. And he's like, "Oh yeah, that'd be easy." Like, yeah, to get all that copper to stay in there, you'd have to undercut everything and then set it and then inlay that copper, then come back and dot punch. And it's like, oh, you give up too easy. No, I don't give up. I just don't have that kind of free time. I mean, I could. Somebody wanted to pay for it. But I don't even want to guess how much that would cost. Just the amount of time it would take. But I guess if you did it all in sheets, you did your inlay all in sheets instead of wire, probably wouldn't be too bad. I mean, you'd still have to undercut everything. I have another idea, but I'd have to try it on a practice plate first. And that's to do scroll work just like this, get it to this point, But instead of having such heavy flares, try and keep the cuts as straight up and down as possible. And then come back in and fill in the background with a with an acrylic resin in whatever color you want, and then sand the whole thing flat until all the resin was off of these surfaces and just left inside the cuts. I think that'd be pretty cool. It'd be a nice way to introduce some color. Some people wouldn't some people wouldn't approve of the fact that you're using, you know, resin and something hand engraved. But I think it could be an interesting effect. I need to touch that up. Almost like, what is that technique using fired glass? Oh, I can't remember what it's called, but um, basically it's creating a cut-in design like this with a machine. Usually it's, using swirls or some kind of mathematical pattern. And then you come back and you melt glass into it. And then you have a transparent color, and then through the color you see this beautiful mathematical pattern underneath it. I don't remember what it's called. It'd be something like that, but using hand engraving and um, acrylic resin or two-part epoxy. Something that'll stand up to the abuse of a gun. Looks like I might have got a little deep there. Oh, looks like my stippling coordination might be a little low today. I said, good days and bad days. Sometimes hands will do exactly what you tell them to do, and other days they're only about 90%. So you try and make sure that you have something that you can work on that only requires, 90% efficiency. Background work is one of those things that's is great for days like that. It looks like today's going to be one of those days. But I did have a really good Reynolds episode this morning, so the nerves in my hands are probably, just firing all sorts of wonky right now. So whenever I cut this, I need to make sure that this line here lines up with this line. So we're going to have to taper this in a little bit more because this whole backbone is so. Oh yeah, there's so many more background treatments I want to learn. This just seems to be the one that is most common, one that everybody expects. It's also the fastest. If you're going to do any background treatment, it's the fastest one that you can do on stainless. Yeah. I guess dot punching would be faster, but you don't see that on stainless very often because that's really rough on dot punches. Yeah, it looks good. I guess just a lined background would be pretty quick too. Although I've never used that. I've never done just a lined background. So I need to touch that up right there. Color is a little different, but no. Put a guideline in here just to make sure that I get that backbone straight. Like I've said before, brass scribe. Why? Because it won't leave a mark on stainless. The ceramic scribe that everybody's been using lately, well, that'll scratch the crap out of a stainless gun. Yeah, I might have taken off just a little bit too much. So it's, no, I'm not cutting that whole line. All I'm going to do because your eye is naturally going to follow this line to its termination point. And right now, it looks like that line comes through there, where in actuality it needs to come there, so I need to take it and shave off just a little bit right there. to create the illusion that it's going where I want it to go. So yeah, that line's a little fat, but whenever I come in here and add this line, and add that line, it's going to get fatter anyway. So I said engravers don't make mistakes, they make happy accidents, learn how to fix things on the fly. Even if what you have to fix isn't really that big of a problem. Like I've said before, if we make it look phenomenal under this magnification, it's going to look great to the naked eye. And that's kind of my whole goal. Yeah. No, only another engraver is going to look at this under magnification. Okay. All right, let's move right along. Oh, let's see. We're an hour and a half in. Oh, I think it's a good time to take a break for a little bit. We'll leave that right there, and I'll be back in 20 minutes. All right, let's get it on the second half. Oh, I need my hat. It's still chilly out here. Oh. It's about 3:30 in the afternoon, and it's still only 50 degrees. All right. Oh, let's stop complaining about the weather and get back to work. Let's do this whole bottom edge. So I took a few minutes and replanted all my baby plants. I said earlier I've been trying to propagate everything in water, but nothing seems to be growing. It's not dying, but it's just not growing. And then it doesn't seem to matter what kind of plant it is, it just, they all stop. I have several of my Monstera clippings, and the leaves are bright green and have been for, you know, a month. They're they each one got a tiny little nodule of root growth, and then just stopped. And of course, I've never tried to grow plants before. This is like the first time I've ever tried growing plants. So it's all an experiment. But I've got hibiscus that grows naturally in my front yard. Well, I don't know if it's naturally, but hibiscus is all over the place down here. But anyway, the one that's in my front yard, it looks like somebody drove a golf cart into the base of it, because there's a huge chunk out of the base of the plant. I mean, I still get fresh flowers every week. I mean, even right now, I've got 3 or 4 fresh flowers on this plant. Ones that just sprung up today. So I know the plant's not dead. But boy, it looks like it took quite a hit. Since everybody around here drives golf carts, and it's about the height of a golf cart, I'm guessing somebody drove into it. So I'm anticipating it dying soon. So I took a cutting off of it, right below a nodule like I'm supposed to. Then put it in some water, try and propagate it, and it's not dying, but it's not really developing any roots either. It developed a tiny little nodule, where the root's supposed to come from, but it just kind of stopped. So I got some Miracle-Gro potting soil and some little pots, and transplanted everything into its own little individual pot. Now, just wait. Everything is on my sun porch, where they get sunlight. No, they get direct sunlight. Um, Probably 60% of the day, and then the rest of the day they're in the shade. So I know they're not starved for sunlight. And I've been changing the water in the propagation station every 3 weeks or so. Trying not to let any algae grow in there, but it's got a little bit of a green tinge, and I think that's just because of where I'm at. So maybe actually getting everything into some soil will help it. I really want to make sure that I get a viable plant off of my hibiscus, because I anticipate it probably won't last another year. Because when I say it's got a big chunk out of it, I mean it's got a big chunk. Now, if this thing weren't throwing up fresh flowers every other day, then, I would guess that it was already dead. But the leaves are green, and I'm getting fresh flowers, so anyway, I took lunch, but didn't really eat lunch. I went and played with plants. Which I think is kind of cool. I've never been in a place where, well, not in 15 years anyway, been in a place where I could have plants. My last few places um, didn't really have any direct sunlight, so I couldn't really grow anything. But here, I have this sun porch that gets direct sunlight most of the day. So I should be able to grow something. Well, I'm just digging now. Why are you so aggressive now? Calm down. That's my inner monologue talking. When you know why I'm cutting so deep, and why I just caught that whole edge of the border. Not doing very good this afternoon, are you? Caught that edge right there. I think I'll take a minute and skinny up my graver a little bit. Oh, I don't want to have to stop. Let's see. I'm gonna do you. I'll be glad when I get another camera over here at the sharpening station. Oh, let's see what that looks like under the scope. They're not bad. How does that look for size? Let's see. Still pretty big. Ow. So now what would be cool would be to try a flat with like a 70 degree maybe. I mean, I could do it with a 90, but I don't think that would provide a whole lot of benefit over the 96. Tell you what, not having a very good time holding on to anything, I'll tell you that. May turn out to be one of those days where my hands are just too uncoordinated to really get anything accomplished. Which happens. I mean, I really tried not to let my hands slow me down, but man, some days there's just nothing I can do about it. Uh, right now, I feel like my hands are pretty swollen. All right, let's get heels. Looks good. It's a little long, but yeah, let's do a little heel on the flat. So yeah, heels on the 96. On the 96 degree portion, and I'm doing heels on the flat. So actually, instead of just having the normal 2 parallel heels, I'm gonna have 3, which is how I had it set up before, and that seemed to be working out pretty well. It's a long heel. I don't know. let's see how it goes. I mean, what's the worst that happens? Got to take it over to the sharpening station and shorten up that heel on the flat and put 2 more heels back on the 96. I mean, chances are very, very slim that I'm going to screw up the gun. So. Unless I do something really, really stupid, I really can't screw it up. Well, who'd have thunk it? Perfect. Now I'm going to do a flat with 90 degrees sometime. Because if you look at this angle, right here at the angle that I'm already cut into this border wall, that's already cut with a 105. That doesn't give me any leeway for minor miscalculations with the 96 to avoid cutting up that wall when I'm doing the outlines. So maybe a 90 would actually work better. Like right now, I'm scraping right against that wall. If I'm tilted just a little bit this way, I'm going to take off the top edge. So when I make a new flat, I'll make one at a 90 degree. For now, we'll just keep going with the 96. That'll force me to pay closer attention to the angle that I'm holding it. And like I keep saying, practice under the worst possible conditions. Everything else after that is just cake. You get really good driving a car in the snow. Do great driving it in the sun. nicked it right there. To be expected when doing background removal. Got to be prepared to touch up your cuts. Beauteous. Easy there, Tuppy. Practically gone. A little bit there, but the smart man wouldn't start touching up his edges until after he's done doing background work. That really looks like I'm taking off a lot, doesn't it? Okay, stipple. Oh, I wish my nose had quit. Oh. Sounds good. Get rid of any chips. So this sounds hollow. Check something real quick. Just make sure that it's tight. There's one little shiny spot that jumps out at me right there. That's fine. Did anybody else just see the bug fly by? The tiny little one just flew down past the corner of the screen. Tell you what, if you've never had a fly land on your workpiece when you're underneath the microscope and you don't know what sudden fear is. And maybe it's just the time of the year it is, but I haven't really had to deal with any bugs landing underneath my scope since I've been here. I had more up in Missouri than I do down here. Oh, there. Oh, you forget how to swallow and then I almost choke on my coffee. It's almost like every day I gotta learn how to human again. Oh, still got a ways to go. You know what I really miss about Missouri is I'm working at the gun shop and doing work, you know, working on my projects, engraving, and I'd take a break, you know, or here, you know, go eat lunch and plant plants or whatever. Gun shop, I'd walk out to the store side and get to hang out with everybody for, you know, 15 or 20 minutes, and then go back to work. Down here, you know, with the exception of Sundays and Monday evenings when I go to church, then go all week without talking to anybody. So, just, you know, but you know, I'm not complaining about being down here. For my medical situation, this is probably one of the best places I could be. I mean, not only is the weather great, but the treatment that I'm doing is down here too. And it's one of the few places in the country that does the treatment that I'm doing. Touch that back up again. So I might have to call it a day. I'm getting awfully tired. I shouldn't be this tired this early in the day, but I am starting to touch my bright cuts. Getting tired, so I'm getting sloppy. I can't afford to be sloppy on these guns. So pay really close attention to any small mistakes you might make, and learn to take breaks when you get tired. Like I've said before, that's why I don't charge as much as other engravers. That's why I can't make promises about when something's going to be done, because with my health, you never know. So I'm gonna finish up this little bit, touch up that little bit of the border that I need to touch up, and probably call it a day, at least for now. And maybe I'll come back and do some more later. But nope, don't touch that. So nice and gentle. Yeah, that looks fine. So get a little bit of ink on what we've done today. Brush off any chips. A little bit of ink on there, and I'm going to call it for a little bit. I don't know, maybe the fact that I didn't eat anything for lunch and my blood sugar's a little low. Elbow. Almost. Yep, there we go. Now other scrubbing. Oh, didn't screw anything up, so that's good. That edge is a little burry. Well, I think this is going to look really good whenever it's done. I'm so happy with how this is coming out. I wish I could get it done faster, but it is what it is. Alright, that's where I'm going to stop for now.